Well, Mike Reed's reporting the following about DeAndre Hopkins. The Tennessee Titans and Patriots have made offers. The Titans have been more aggressive to this point, and Hopkins has not been in a rush to sign. One reason for Hopkins to wait a bit longer is to leave open the possibility of another team entering the mix, potentially increasing his market. Let's take a look at the state of the big local four local pro teams. Patriots, right now, they rank 31st out of 32 NFL teams in total cash spending for 2023. Celtics passed on keeping Grant Williams for salary cap reasons, but they did acquire Kristaps Porzingis. The Red Sox trimmed payroll by about $15 million from last season to this year. And the Bruins are now looking for salary cap relief after going all in last season. And this is where we begin our deep dive today, guys. It's not often that when we talk about Boston sports, we look around and we go, I don't really feel like everybody's going all in anymore. I feel like everyone's cutting corners and rebuilding and figuring out how they can do things on the margins. That is a word I've heard far too often, around the margins. Tomase, do you feel like this is still a town where we're all in? We're all in to win a title.
No, I mean, definitely not. You look at the Patriots, you showed it, 31st in spending. I know they went crazy in free agency a couple of years ago. Maybe they feel a little scared straight because that did not work out so well for them.
But middle tier, not high, not upper tier, middle tier guys for that.
Sure, no, just in total, the total spending. But I look at the Red Sox, that's always a team that led baseball in payroll. They are not that team at all right now. You look at the guys they shed, Bogarts, J.D. Martinez, Nathan Eovaldi. So even though the payroll is kind of similar to what last year's was, it's not long-term deals. It's not star power. The Celtics are the one team that I do feel like is still going for it, Phil. But overall, this is not the Boston of 10 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's led to that. Is it the fact that they've all had some level of success that has led to them dialing back in some way? Is there a general malaise that has swept the region, which I think has happened to some of the fan base? Like the passion, I think, for some of the fan base in certain corners, it's just not what it was before the Red Sox won in 2004 or before the Patriots won in 2001. So I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's these teams don't feel like the Patriots and the Red Sox, I would say specifically, they don't feel like they're in a championship window. And so why would we go out of our way to spend above and beyond what we normally would do to push the envelope? Because what's the point if we're not going to get to where we ultimately want to be anyway? I don't know the answer to those questions, but it does feel like when we lay it out that way, it doesn't feel like every team is putting all their chips into the middle of the table.
It's interesting because I never stop to think about it, but the Celtics are the last Boston team to not win a title, right? Like 2008, everybody else has won since then, so there is a little bit more of an urgency for them. And as we laid out, like it does somewhat bother me that they weren't willing to kind of pay to keep Grant Williams, but you can justify it, right? Like this new second apron, you got to be a little bit more fiscally responsible, especially if you're going to pay Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Kristaps Porzingis deep into the future. So they just got to allocate their resources, but there might come a time where like there is somebody out there and they have the assets to push all in. I just go back to it. That's why we keep talking about Damian Lillard and the right fit and the right person. I wonder if there will come a point where they're just like, okay, the second apron be damned, we're just going to push all in. And they feel like the most likely of the teams trying to do that.
So I think the one area, like we're going to kind of hit more specifically each team, but I do want to start with the Patriots because they're an interesting sort of case study, right? Like they're not where the Celtics are. And they're not in a position, I think, like the Red Sox are, where you can spend and just pay a tax. So you do have to stay, even if the cap is crap, you do have to stay within some margins. But they have money, Phil, to spend. And then you hear a report like Mike Reese where you hear the Tennessee Titans are being more aggressive. Like the one thing the Patriots need is to have some success this year. No one's asking them to win the Super Bowl, but you need to be competitive. You need to be a playoff contending team. Like there are literal jobs on the line. So I have a hard time understanding what the aversion is there to spending some money and going all in on a guy like DeAndre Hopkins.
I'm with you. And I don't think all in necessarily means blowing him away, giving him the bag, quote unquote, right? You don't have to do that with DeAndre Hopkins. His market is what it is right now. It's basically two teams. He's hoping it becomes more than two teams eventually if there's an injury somewhere else. But right now, he's a 30-plus-year-old receiver who doesn't have as much interest as he thinks he should. it's not going to cost you all that much. And we laid it out. They're near the bottom of the league in spending this year. They are scheduled to be at the bottom of the league in spending the next 2 years after this one. Bill Belichick told us the day after the season this past season that if you add up the spending that they'd done in the past 3 years, because he was asked about that free agent spending spree they did a couple years ago, he said, well, if you actually look at it in a 3-year window, we were 27th in spending. So we haven't spent that much. My question is, if it's not for a borderline Pro Bowl caliber receiver who has unexpectedly become available at a position of need for your team, when are you spending the money? Because they don't have a number of young players that are going to make money hand over fist in new contracts, especially the way this past draft went. It looked like they just drafted a Kyle Duggar replacement. They drafted an edge defender. Josh Uche's in a contract year as well. And they drafted 3 guards, and their best guard is up for a contract after this year too. They don't have money coming down the line. It's not like they have a Joe Burrow that they need to pay in the next offseason or 2, unless they're planning on giving, I don't know, $500 million to Mac Jones. Like, where is this money eventually going to go? If you're not going to spend it on Hopkins, where do you spend it?
Don't forget, they did take 2 kickers.
I was going to say, is there like an elite level long snapper out there that we can overspend for?
A special teamer.
Yeah, like,
I mean, that's what kills me.
That would make sense. If they were planning on paying all these guys, giving them all long-term extensions in the next offseason or 2, I would get it. They're near the bottom of the league. But next offseason, that's going to shoot way up. And the offseason after that, it's going to shoot way up. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So why not spend on a guy like this who's unexpectedly become available and will help you?
Are there going to be players, and this is where my football naivety now, not paying attention to it every day, like, are there going to be elite level free agents that they could chase by positioning themselves to spend responsibly now?
Well, they could have this year. I mean, they could have gone for, I think, an elite level, like, offensive line.
There are a few offensive tackles that were available.
And they didn't go after him. And it's not like they drafted because, like, when you're talking, Phil, about these guys coming down the pike, it's not like they went out and got even, like, other than Christian Gonzalez, it's not like they put a bunch of skill players on their roster who are younger and who in 2, 3, 4 years are going to need to get paid. Like, those aren't there either.
And those guys are so far, somebody like Christian Gonzalez is so far out from getting his new deal, like it would be hard to even project. I just think when you look at cash spending, in the NFL at least, that's usually a pretty good indicator as to which front offices and which ownership groups really feel they have a chance to win a title. And the teams that are spending the most are going for it because they think they can win. What does it tell us about what the Patriots think of themselves? The fact that they haven't spent, again, 27th in that 3-year window that Bill Belichick told us about when he wasn't even really asked about it. And now they're 31st this year, 31st next year, and 32nd 2 years from now.
You know what it tells me? It tells me they still think that they have Tom Brady. I mean, they're coming out of that now clearly, but they were operating this team like they had the elite level quarterback who could cover up for anybody else, all their deficiencies, and they could be bottom of the league in payroll. Now they can't. And it feels like they are the last to figure that out.
And we're getting them in trouble for something they haven't done yet, to steal a line from Michael Felger. Like, they might still get DeAndre Hopkins. But that report from Mike Reese, and that's consistent with what I've heard as well, the Patriots aren't going to be so over-aggressive in trying to acquire DeAndre Hopkins that they do something crazy, right? That's not what I'm hearing from Foxborough right now. But the fact that they're not as aggressive as the other, they should be at least as aggressive as the next most aggressive team, in my opinion.
Which is, looking at them talent-wise, the Titans are about where the Patriots are. All right, I do want to quickly get to the other 2 teams. Chris, you talked about the Celtics and, the second apron and all of these things. I just want to talk about next year in particular. Sure. Like, are they set up to go for it next year the way that they are? Like, are they going for it, or are they taking a step back to take a step forward?
So again, the big wild card in all this is as unsexy as it is to trade back and get all these second-round draft picks and to get more off the Marcus Smart trade and all that, and you're thinking, like, what are they going to do with that? Like, historically, second-round picks haven't been important. But then you look at deals. Bradley Beal went for 4 first-round pick swaps and 6 second-round picks. At the trade deadline last year, Jakob Poeltl, who we spent a lot of time on this program talking about, went for a first-round pick in 2 seconds. So they had the ability to get into the conversation. So while I don't see them spending to the apron going into next year, we might sit there and say, are they not all committed to it? Are they just so worried about long-term financials? But I do think there's the potential that they get into the year. It's confirmed that they're a championship level team. And sometimes you just got to see that, right? Like, you just got to get to the midway point of the season and be, okay, the pieces are lined up here. Everyone's healthy, all those things. And then they could just decide, okay, we're going to go for it. We're going to make a trade. We're going to add payroll. We're going to pay some crazy tax. But they know how important it is for them to get back, at least get back to that championship stage. And it bothers them that they kind of took a step back this past season.
Shouldn't they already be in that mode, though, Tomase? Like, they should know they're in that championship window. Why do they have to to see it, especially when they're so aggressive getting somebody like Porzingis, who they think is going to make their team better, and specifically their offense better. But it just has to be the right player.
Like, I think that's what it comes down, and not to jump on you, but like, I just feel like, you know, we can talk about like who's out there that you would push all those chips in for, and I know you would push Lillard, but I just think they have to wait for the right person, because if you're gonna spend that money, it sure hell better work.
Yeah, and all I would say is the guy that I'm watching is Brogdon. If they dump Brogdon in a way that just clears more salary, then they are 100% worse. No, I mean 100% they are worse than they were last year. And I don't see how you go into a season worse.
I just hated the Grant Williams trade, Trenni, because they got nothing back. They got second-round picks, and I get you can package them all together, maybe you get something down the line. But they got nothing back to make it what should be a team that's in contention mode worse. You didn't have to do this. Yes, it was going to cost you a little bit of money, but sometimes that's what it takes to go and win a championship and be aggressive and be that championship level team. You have to spend, and I know it gets crazy, and I know it's a whole new world with the second apron, but man, this guy's a good player. He's a versatile defender. I think you're going to have to be a different team defensively next year. He was good for this team because he spaced the floor. There are things on the court that I think really could help them, especially in the postseason, that now they're going to be without. And maybe they're going to be looking for a Grant Williams type now when they see that, hey, we're actually a championship team. Let's go get a Grant Williams. Wouldn't it be nice to have somebody like that?
I want to quickly get to the Red Sox. We're going to talk more about them in the next block. But, like, it doesn't feel – John, it used to feel like every couple of years they would go through a cycle where, like, let's step back, but then let's throttle forward. I don't see them throttling forward anytime soon.
Yeah, I think there are two reasons for it, and they're both directly related to John Henry. One is what's happening in soccer. He owns the teams overseas. You have foreign money coming in, just making a mockery of any idea of, you know, fiscal responsibility. He does not like that. He hired his GM from the Rays, and there was a reason for that, because he looked at it and said, you can win at a high level for not a lot of money. I want to do that. And I think those two things are driving John Henry right now, and they're driving us crazy because we look at the Red Sox and say, just spend something, and they're not doing it.
And I'm like, sell.
And now they're kind of winning. Yeah, so it's frustrating.
Sell the team.